Victor Gao, Chair Professor at Sochu University, joins us from Beijing for more analysis on this. Mr. Gao, many thanks for speaking to us. How significant, firstly, is this meeting between the two foreign ministers?
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, it is very significant for the two foreign ministers of China and the United States to meet in person. And this time, the meeting took place in Bali during the foreign ministers' meeting of the G20. And we know the world is at a tipping point for war or peace. China and the United States should do their best to maximize chances for peace rather than to play fire with war. And I think you mentioned the hostilities between China and the United States. I would agree with Foreign Minister Wang Yi and State Councillor Wang Yi, who said these hostilities were self-imposed and created by the United States' anti-China policy. From the Chinese perspective, we do hope such hostilities will be removed or vanish. Why? Because it will be good for the Chinese people as well as for the American people. So the meeting is very important, and I do hope more meetings will take place soon. During the past month or so, there have been about 5 high-level meetings of all kinds between Beijing and Washington. I think it demonstrates that both countries do not want to play with fire against each other. Eventually, they will need to learn how to get along with each other.
Yeah, so interested then to get to what you think it will be the outlook on the future relationship between China and the United States going forward.
Well, it's difficult to say. I think from the Chinese perspective, there is a deep perception that the United States is out there to get hold of China and try to hold China down to the ground and to deprive China's chance of peaceful rise in its economic development. I think the United States is suffering from schizophrenia because they worry that China will eventually surpass that of the United States in terms of the size of the economy, and then the United States will lose its so-called hegemony in the world. From the Chinese perspective, our economic development is actually a right for the Chinese nation, and no one in the world should deprive that economic growth right of the Chinese people. Otherwise, it would be probably the largest crime against humanity. On the other hand, China does not want to become the next hegemon in the world. We want to get along with all countries in the world, treat every country, big and small, with respect and decency. In that sense, China will be very different from the United States today and many years later. I think the world will be big enough to accommodate both China and the United States. We can eventually get along with each other. I think the ball very much is in the court of the United States. And if they really want to play rush balls against China, then we will have very, very difficult relations. But if they can really learn the philosophy of getting along with China, despite of all the differences we may have, then the world will be a better world.
And tell me this, in a time of ongoing global crises that we're seeing around the world, of course, how important is it that China and the US do indeed work more closely together?
You're absolutely right. There are issues in the world which are global in nature and which require the cooperation of all the countries in the world, especially China and the United States, the two largest economies. You are talking about climate change, energy crisis, financial crisis, you name it. And then there are issues which are very, very dangerous for mankind as a whole. For example, this war in Ukraine, which does not have any prospect of winding down, for example, and may even spill over to other European countries or even NATO member states. You are talking about the potential loss of control of the war in Ukraine. And I think it's time for big countries like China to really play a mediation role, to bring Russia on the one hand and Ukraine on the other hand to the same negotiation table. And then the war in Ukraine is not just between Russia and Ukraine. We know for sure behind Ukraine, you have the United States and other NATO states, members. So you are talking about a very complicated situation. But if we do not have the ability to restore peace to Ukraine, then the world will not be stable. And there will be no lasting peace in the world if, for example, attempts are being made to exclude Russia, which is the largest nuclear power in the world. So I think between China and the United States, there will be a lot of things they can talk about between themselves, as well as on global stage, the more they talk, the more they can find common grounds, the better.
Victor, many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.